any personal financial questions you might have, and we'll put that link in the chat. But without further ado, please join me in welcoming Vanessa Martinez. Take it away, Vanessa.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, Savvy Ladies, for everything that you do. It's a great community to be a part of. And I'm sure many of us on this call have many things that we have in common. But one thing I do know for sure that we have in common is wanting to help others and each other. So having that nice vibe that we all have together. Today, I'm going to share, if I can get access to share my screen from the host, I will start sharing. There you go. And as was mentioned earlier, today we're going to talk about overcoming decision paralysis. Hold on. So I'll start off with a brief introduction, then kind of explain what decision paralysis is. I'll give a case study that, there's many families that I've worked with, and I can see the effects and risks that come from decision paralysis. But most importantly today, I hope we all walk away with useful, not just advice, but an actual tool that we're going to walk through. So I'm excited to share that with you. And if you can, this will be in a few minutes, but if everyone can get a sheet of paper, pen and pencil, whatever your preference, just so you have it ready when it comes time to get to the tools. And then I'll give you a few resources. And of course, I'll leave time for Q&A. If you're just like me and you need to jot down that question or throw it into the chat, please do so, and we'll get to those at the end of the call. Okay, so oh, sorry. I think I stopped sharing there. Hold on a sec. Okay, so share a little bit about me. So like many of you on this call, I am a wife. I'm a mother of two daughters, 9 and 13, which is such a great age. I say that tongue in cheek, quite difficult. A middle sister, a daughter, a friend, unofficial counselor. I think we all have a little bit of that in us. A youth group leader, mentor, a wing woman for any of you out there that need one, party planner, bookworm, and music enthusiast. I start with these items about me just because I know that there's many other things that I'm truly proud of, like being a managing director partner at the Learner Group, co-author to a book, Family Value at Risk, being named one of Barron's 2020 top women advisors, as well as Forbes 2020 and 2021 America's top women advisors and best in state advisors. So all of that is very, it makes me proud, but at the same time, when I introduce myself, I believe that the key attributes are those that I spoke of first, as well as with everyone on this call. Too many times I feel we think that we need to have all of those other pieces to have knowledge, but it's not true. We have so much knowledge. I recently seen a meme and it said, I wish we could put our being a mother as one of our experiences on our resume. Why? Because there is so much negotiation we have to do with our kids and with our husbands at home that should be part of our resume. So I agree with that meme. Okay, let's dig in. So what is decision paralysis? So it's when you stop in your tracks and you start to overthink and overanalyze, right? So it could be overanalyzing what you're doing for lunch, So somebody will ask you what you need and you say, oh, do you want to go to Chick-fil-A or do you want to have sushi? And you'll go back and forth in your mind until you're ready to make that decision. The difference here is that because you know you have to eat, you're pressured to make the decision and you'll do so. Now, if you think of things more like, should I open my own business? That is where decision paralysis really kicks in. Do you or don't you? When do you decide? Then you say, you know what? I need to gather information. This is you talking to yourself. I need to gather more information. I need more resources before I do that. Am I ready? Am I not? So all of that overanalyzing sometimes brings us to not doing anything. And that happens quite often when it comes to financial decisions. We just stop in our tracks and believe that this continued process of getting more resources, reading more, educating more, is leading you to the point to make that decision. The problem is sometimes it doesn't. You end up with decision paralysis and you don't take that next step. So today, I'm hoping that with a few tools that I share, it will take you to that next step. So I'm going to share a story that is quite impactful, at least personally. This was a family I was helping. We have John and Sarah. They have 2 children. And we had talked about creating that will. And they said, you know, we're going to get to it. We just can't decide whether it should be Sarah's sister, or John said whether it should be my brother that takes the kids if anything were to happen to us. Now, in their home, John and Sarah, they had their 2 kids, but they also had Sarah's mother living with them because she was ill, so she needed to be watched over. Unfortunately, John and Sarah take a trip without the children, and obviously the unexpected happens and they both pass. As sad as that could be, the repercussions of what's left when you're gone is the biggest issue. So who gets to decide now who keeps the kids? The court decides. So fortunately, because the grandmother was living with them, the kids got to stay in their home, which is one level of accommodation that the court will do where they could stay with you. But in some cases that won't happen. Now the court has to go through paperwork, through either Sarah's sister requesting the kids, John's brother requesting the kids, the animosity between the family. So all of these issues are happening now because of decision paralysis. They couldn't come to terms on who should have the children, who should be assigned as guardian, that they made no decision. And that's what I want to make sure that all of you on this call can take into account. So everyone, now it's time for pen and paper. If you have this going on with you right now, you have minor children and have not drafted a will, please, if it's you making the sole decision or if you have to make the decision with your spouse, please take that time right now and jot something down. You can change it later. That is the key point here. Have that will drafted, pick a person for now, and if you decide to change that later, that's okay, because it can be changed. It's not permanent. Obviously, it's not a light decision to make, I understand, and that's what makes it so difficult. But too many people don't have anything drafted. And do you really want the court or the state to decide who gets your children? So let's write that down, to have that conversation, set some time apart, but truly kind of just make the decision today. And the decision is to make a decision, right? Let's do something. Okay. And these are risks. The risks involved on having decision paralysis, specifically on the financial side, is having to make last minute pressured decisions about your finance. And what do I mean by that? Statistics show that men happen to pass before women. So if your spouse passes and you were never involved in the finances, then at that point, you need to make decisions. The clock starts ticking, right? So now it's, you have to do this, you have to do that. And at the same time, you're trying to mourn. So if you're in that situation, now you're making those pressure decisions where you don't get to acquire the knowledge before you take that next step, because decisions weren't made previous to that time. So let's make sure we're not, or try not to be placed in those types of positions. Not being prepared for retirement, because we never decided to start contributing to that 401k that our employer gives us. Because let's say your employer doesn't give you a 401k, that's still okay. Guess what you could do? You can open an IRA, a traditional one, a Roth one. You could still do something to plan for retirement. You just have to take that next step and do something. And it could risk your financial independence. That's another big aspect that too many of us are attached to our spouse's finances, which are ours as well, but we're not well informed because we decide to kind of take that back seat. We decide to say, oh, you take care of that and I'll take care of this. And I get it, right? If someone's really great at it, they should take the lead on certain aspects of the household, right? But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be involved in the process. That is the side that I'm trying to get at. Be involved. And it's both responsibilities. It's not just the spouse to make sure he brings the other one, like, come on, you have to come to this meeting. It should be both ways. We should start asking questions. We should want to be involved. And I know sometimes this can be the case where it's a little intimidating to talk to our spouse about finances if we feel we don't have that knowledge to even speak that terminology, but we just have to be vulnerable. Put yourself in that spot and say, I don't understand this, and that's okay. It is tricky in some cases. You just have to be able to let your guard down. And I mean, we can't know everything, right? So let's just take that next step. Okay, the causes for financial decision paralysis. Not knowing. Right before this call, I talked to Tracy for a couple minutes, and one of the key factors is not knowing, not understanding how to get started. Like, what should I do? Right? All of you on this call, what's the next step? Like, what should I really, what's the easiest way to get in? Or what's the smartest way to get in? Or the fastest way to get in, right? Because we don't know, which I'll help with that today as well. So I can help remove one portion of it. Or many believe the decision is permanent. This takes us back to the John and Sarah story, that neither of them could commit to each other's siblings to take the children. So they made no decision, right? It's not permanent. You can change it, but at least you can talk amongst yourselves to be able to say, this is better than nothing. And if we change it as the years go past, that's okay. We can change it. Or another thing that I see happen, even as a wealth advisor, I can't time the market, right? I can't know, oh, now is the best time. Oh, did you see our economy right now? Maybe we should wait. Or, oh, now things are looking great. Maybe now I should get in. Maybe it's too high now. So it's either too low, it's scary, or too high, it's scary. Yes, investing is different. And because we don't know so much about it, sometimes it is a little intimidating, but you can't time the market. We can't time the market being in this field and reading the news every single day. So don't try to do that. You just, there's a term, but I'll explain it more. So you just average into the market. So if you know you have $5,000, $10,000, slowly put the money into the market, and then you'll average into it. Okay. Now the tools. So this is the fun part. We're going to start with recognizing we have it. It's kind of like AA. You're putting yourself out there and you're saying, I have a problem, right? And I'll admit to it. I know that there's many aspects in my life that I double guess myself. I just contemplate back and forth to wait. So as long as you can jot down right now, everyone, back to the pen and paper, what decision have you contemplated for quite some time that you know you need to take that next step and make that decision? So if everyone could at least jot down one thing that you know that you keep putting off. We're going to dive into the tool for today, but for all of you that are watching and listening and have something written down on your paper right now, let's celebrate that win, because that means you've recognized that there is something that you need to do, and that is the first step. So even if I stop recording now, we've established one good thing. We know that there's something on that sheet that we need to do. Now I'm hopeful that the next couple slides can give you one completed tool that you can use going forward. Before I go into the tool, I want to talk about a topic that comes up a lot with the families that I work with, or in general with friends and family. It's talking to your partner about money-making decisions. It is so critical that both of you are on the same page. The last thing that you want is that there is one that passes before the other, and the one that's left wasn't part of the financial decisions, but now they're stuck with the outcome. Because we stay far away from the finances, we don't get to see what's in the process, what's in the making. And even dependent on the level of assets that you've put away, sometimes maybe your spouse made the decision to pass all whatever you've both worked hard for to one child that he prefers over the other. Or what are we in today? Modern families, right? So when we have modern families, it could be he decided to give everything to his kids, or she decided to leave everything to hers. So it's critical that you make these decisions together so that after the fact, the outcome is what you both decided on, not one person. Because remember, this is family wealth here. And the best way that we can start is creating that net worth. And believe me, the conversation can be a little uncomfortable to have sometimes. I'm hoping not as often as I hear it is, but let's take that step, talk to our partner, because on this next sheet, today we'll take the steps with you on the call, but it would be wonderful if you leave little spots there that you can fill with your spouse later today. Okay, so what is a net worth statement? As complicated as it sounds, it's those three numbers right up there. Your total assets, total debt, which gives you your net worth. That's all it is. So we're going to walk through it real quick, and pen and paper, let's jot these items down, and I'm hopeful that there's a few things that will trigger a reminder for each of you. So the first portion is the assets. What are assets? Starting with retirement accounts, those of you on this call that have had previous jobs, let's remember back in time when you were 20, 30, 40, whatever it is. Where did you work? Did you contribute to, did they have a 401k? Did you contribute to it? And did you ever roll it over? And by roll it over, there's two options. You grab that 401k and roll it into your new employer's 401k, or maybe you didn't have another job before you didn't have the previous job. You rolled it over into an IRA, maybe with an investment advisor, maybe at a bank. But what happens in a lot of cases is we do nothing. What does this mean? Our old 401k is exactly where we left it, at our old employer. This could be 3 jobs ago. And that means there's 3 other 401ks just lingering out there. And at the time that we're maybe getting the new job, or at the time that maybe we left this job, we might be thinking, oh, there's so many other things I have to do, that we are like, we'll get to that. So everyone, please write down places that you've worked in the past and try to remember if you did or didn't leave a 401k. If you have the slightest hesitation or thought that maybe you did, let's write it down. Start making that list of all of those items, regardless. There'll be quite a few if you've worked at multiple places. So that's 401ks, IRAs, could be 403bs. There's multiple different, it depends if you're a teacher, 457s. They can have all different types of numbers, but it's basically the retirement plan offered by the employer where you were at the time. So let's write those down, and that's for everyone on this call. And then hopefully later on today, you share with your spouse and they can incorporate, and maybe it's a good reminder for them, right? Maybe you're sharing with them, hey, do you remember if you worked somewhere? Oh yeah, I did. I worked there for 5 years. Look at that. You found $3,000 somewhere. So this is a good portion. So I'm hoping everyone's writing this down. Now let's go to what we classify as taxable accounts. What are taxable accounts? Basically, everything that's not a retirement account. This can go range anywhere from checking and savings. So let's write that down. And it's really important to write if it's in just your name, in you and your spouse's name, maybe an inheritance you received from your parents. But where is it? What's the title? And how much is in there? So besides checking and savings, it could be maybe you already started investing. So you have this investment or brokerage account somewhere. Let's make sure we have them all on this list, right? So if you have an account with any type of custodian, custodians, those are like Fidelities, Schwab's, those are the common names that we hear out there, those names. So let's make sure we're jotting all of those items down. I'm hoping I'm giving everyone enough time. 1, to kind of give you that reminder, and 2, to be writing these items in here. And we can see that here I have the custodian that I mentioned. It's nice that you reference that, because then when you look back at your paperwork, you're like, oh yeah, this is over here, this is over there, right? Because then we get a little unorganized, but we can kind of see them all. Remember, this is a snapshot in time. So you just write all those in, and then you're going to total all of your investment assets. Okay. Other assets. So in other assets, it's not as complicated as that sounds. So there's private investments. What is that? I'll give you an easy way to understand this is maybe your brother, sister, cousin, uncle decided to open a business. They decided to open a restaurant, and they knew that you were financially savvy and that you had put money away. So they asked, do you want to invest in this restaurant that I'm opening? 2 ways. Either you are partially owner of it, or you loaned it to them. In this case, I did the example of a loan. You loaned Bob $20,000. So it is a loan that's out, but it is an asset because Bob has to pay it back. Well, we're hoping Bob pays it back. But you put that in your column because you did that. If your spouse did something else, you can write that in there when you talk to them later tonight. And this could be multiple different, it could be in businesses, it could be maybe something that was inherited to you, like a stock. Back in the day, people used to give like a Disney stock, right? So you'd get the little certificate, that's a private. We'll hold that here just to separate it from all of your other investment assets that we spoke about earlier. Another piece that I feel sometimes we forget is part of our net worth is our home. Of course, there's a mortgage, sometimes tied to it. That'll be in the liabilities page, but we're still on other assets. So here we have an example of Jane and Joe. They have their home in Illinois worth $450, and they have it in joint name. As well, they have a Florida condo worth $150. So we're putting that in the joint column because that's how they have it titled. Here, where we can kind of separate a little bit is maybe you bought the home before you were married, so it's only in your name. This is why it's important to make sure that when you add whatever asset, that you put it in the right column. So it reminds you, maybe it's time we update that. And finally, I think part of that we don't like to talk about this side are liabilities, anything that we owe. So here I tried to keep it simple, didn't want to extend it. Our mortgage, we owe money on a residential property. So the Illinois home was worth $450, and now the mortgage on it is $3. So there's still a difference between the $450 and the $3. So remember here too, on your other investments, the home, it's what the home is worth, not what you paid for it. So we know that home values have gone up quite a bit in every state this year, with everything going on, everyone deciding to move to a different state to take advantage of nature or whatever their reason is, moving closer to home to be by the family. So there's been quite a shift between where people live. And now that you have work from home, that you can be anywhere, that's kind of how you move things around. Okay. I know I wanted to wait till the end for questions, but there is a quick one here, and I think it's good since we're filling out the form right now. There's a question on what would be considered outside of your estate. So in this practice case, I didn't put anything outside of the estate, but something that I've mentioned a little bit is inheritance, right? Maybe you have that inheritance. Maybe you've gotten this from someone. So that, in some cases, dependent on how it's gifted to you, it can be classified outside of your estate. So that gets a little more on the estate planning side, but if something is gifted to you and you can, and they don't have control over it, like they can't touch the money, they can push it outside of your estate, which is an advantage when you have worked really hard and have grown your estate, which is this net worth statement, right? That's what's considered you. Everything you own, and after you remove everything you owe, that's your net worth. So all of this is on one pile. Every state has a different exemption level, which says, oh, if you have this much money, we're going to charge you this much in taxes, right? So it's money that you work for. So there are certain cases where people try to say, hey, you've made so much, let's throw this over here on the outside of a state bucket. So that way you don't get extra taxed on something maybe your previous generation has already paid taxes on. So that's what goes in that column. So if you know of some type of gift that was given, then let's place that in the out of estate bucket. And we can dig a little deeper, read a little more about if that was given to you actually does classify to be outside of your estate. Okay, another person asked, what is the best way to check if there's a 401k or other account from a previous employer? How can you find them? I know this is going to be kind of like a hunt, but first you go to the employer. So whatever the name of the employer, if you recall having that 401k, then you're going to recall having received some kind of statement. So that is an easy way to say, I remember looking at that statement. So going back to the example of the most common names is like Fidelity and Schwab. So let's pick one of those. Let's say you remember that statement that you got at one point, it's saying Fidelity. Guess what you get to do? You call Fidelity. You can Google it. There's a 1-800 number. You give your information, your birthday, your social, you tell them where you worked, and they're able to pull you up in their system. So it's great. Some get a little more complicated, and I mean, we need more time on the call, but That's the first step. So any of you out there that started writing those down and have the concern that maybe you do have something, let's think long and hard. If not, I mean, you could do more research. Let's say you're like, well, I don't even remember. I don't remember ever seeing a statement, or I remember seeing it, but I don't recall the name on it. We could still go back to your employer. So you Google the name of your employer and where their 401k plan is held. You call them. And if they say, no, we don't have anything in your name here, then you say, was there a previous owner? And they can tell you, yes, before it came here, it was here. And I know this sounds like so annoying, but don't leave your money out there. Please make these calls. Let's call that other one, that other plan provider, and ask them the same question. They legally have to tell you who was before them until you find yourself. I know that's a little difficult. There's other websites that I can share. I don't have it right now off the top of my head, but there's another website just like, what is it not called? Lost items. I can't remember right now, but I'll share that so we can post that. Okay, we got liabilities here and student loans. That's another one that's on here for each person. So if you have some, your spouse has some, let's make sure we write all of those in. So I'm really excited. I'm hopeful that all of you are writing down and have basically just built your net worth statement, at least your own, before you go with your spouse later tonight. And we go. Oh, there you go. Now we're going to do a little math. So each one of that in those little boxes, obviously on my sheet, on your sheet of paper, if you total up everything that was retirement, the checking and savings accounts that we talked about, if you total that, that'll be your assets. In the other assets bucket, this is where we had the home, the loan, or if you invested in someone else's business, we had that bucket. Let's total that one. And then you can see on the bottom, we're going to total the assets and the other liabilities. That'll give you that total. And then we're going to deduct your total liabilities. And then we get your total net worth statement. Yay! I think I'm the only one excited. I wish I could hear all of you. It would make this a little more exciting. Otherwise, I'm just talking. But, oh yes, thank you so much. So we had someone post it, that unclaimed, that's what that was, unclaimed. So if everyone wants, they can click on that link and you type in some of your information and that'll take you to anything else. But remember, this unclaimed is only going to be after a certain time frame, right? So it might be that you had a job 2 years ago. You're not going to find your 401k here because it hasn't reached the mark where the company says, I'm not going to keep managing this, right? So I'm going to just drop it off in the unclaimed. So it's a certain time frame when it then goes onto this website. But definitely, thank you very much, Mary, for adding that. I definitely think everyone should copy and paste this somewhere else so that way it doesn't get lost after we finish this call and you can't go back into the chat. So that is a great website to look up anything that you're unsure where it is. Okay. So we would need a whole other call to create a budget, but I truly thought that having that net worth statement is the first step. Most of you probably, I would hope, already have a budget of what your income is and what your expenses are, and then what you have left over, because that's what the budget is. Similar to the net worth statement, but more derived off cash flow from income. So building that budget will be key to know what you truly have left over and being hopeful that what is left over can start going into investing. That's kind of what I would consider successful from this call, that you know how much you have to be able to put into that. Or at least after building the net worth statement together today, that you have now in front of you that net worth statement that shows you all your numbers, right? Regardless of what the result is at the end of that sheet, you now have it all in one paper and it's right in front of you, that this will be the guide to help you make decisions going forward. And here is where we get to start investing. And like we said in the beginning, one of the pieces that makes us think I'm not ready yet is because we don't know where to start. So the easiest way to start is if you are employed and they do offer the 401k option at work, I'm going to more than recommend kind of really, really, really push hard for you to start contributing. Because typically, and I'm going to say typically because it's not all the time, your employer will also offer a match. And I get it. We're all in different phases in our life. We're all in different financial and economical situations. So sometimes maybe someone's thinking, well, guess what, Vanessa? I can't right now. I really, really can't. And I get that. But I'm still going to push and say, at least do 1%. 1%. 1%. What is that? And I don't want to limit you on other things, but I guess I do. Maybe don't have that coffee, right? At Dunkin', at Starbucks, at wherever you have it. Let's have it at home. Just adjusting your lifestyle for some time to allow you to start contributing there, because we're leaving that money on the table. Your employer is willing to match whatever you put in this account. Why not do it? So that's the first step. And one of those tips on the 401k is make sure you review it annually, just to make sure things adjust, your life adjusts. So it's nice to kind of change those allocations, not constantly, because it's for the future, it's for the long term, right? But annually is a great time to check it, and making sure your funds are invested. So in certain companies, they'll automatically invest it for you, but in others, you just put the money in there and they'll take it because that's what you told them to do, but you never told them to invest it. So you have to make sure, talk to someone. I'm sure your coworkers are more than willing and able to help you in saying, hey, you should, you left it in cash. Look up the website, the plan together, and maybe a mentor you have at work or a supervisor that you have at work would be willing to kind of help along that way. Because I know that that's private. So you don't want to just share it with anyone. But also sometimes because we're so private, we share with no one and we do nothing. So that is what I want to kind of help with. Let's not do nothing. Okay, I have another question. Okay, we talked about insurance. So insurance is a lengthy topic, and I do believe that everyone should have some sort of insurance. An easy one that I can talk about today, quick and easy, is just term insurance. It has term means it cuts off, right? So you pay typically a very low amount per year and you get a set time. So you could do a 10-year term, a 20-year term. And that will protect that if something happens to you, let's say you don't have a spouse, you're a single mom, but you want to make sure your kids are okay. What we typically recommend is to make sure that if you're gone, your debt is paid. That's normal. It's your mortgage, right? So if you owe, let's say, $200,000 on your mortgage, $300,000 on your mortgage, you want to make sure at least your life insurance can cover that and some income for some time for your children. So when you're looking for a coverage amount, you want it to be over whatever your debt is. So that'll be different for each person, but I do agree that we should all have some type of insurance. That was that question. Okay, I'm gonna move up a little bit. This is a long question. Hold on, here you go. So it says, I was contributing more than my employer matched to my 401k, but I have read to only contribute up to the match. Then max out my Roth, then go back and up the 401k contribution. What is the rationale for this? So I'm going to answer that portion of the question first. So the rationale for this, I'm sure there's multiple. My rationale for this, I should say, in my opinion, your 401k sometimes gives you limited options on what you can invest in. Some are very, very limited, where it'll say, okay, here you contribute, we'll match, and you can pick between these 4 funds to put your money in. That's it. You only have 4 options. So this is the exposure that you'll get to the stock market. So there is where we do say, maximize the total that you could put in there, including, which is great because you get the match, and then you can contribute outside. Because this is the great thing that you brought up. You can have both. You can have your 401k plan at work, and you can contribute to a traditional or Roth IRA outside. So you're really pumping up how much you save for retirement. So that's a great thing to do, by the way. Some people don't even know they can. They're like, oh, I'm already contributing. Well, you can contribute more. If you have more, I agree. Definitely contribute more. The maximum amount that you can contribute to an IRA or Roth IRA is $6,000 right now. If you're over the age of 50, you get what they call a $1,000 catch-up, which means over the age of 50, you can do $7,000 a year. Now, Roth, traditional. I'm telling you, I can go for days, but I don't want to bore everyone. There are limitations on your income level to contribute to a Roth. So it really depends on where you're at, but I agree, dependent on your situation, Roth might be the best option to contribute to, but you'd really just have to have a conversation with an advisor and dig through that. But if you can, I agree, contribute to both. Okay, so this is also sometimes a misconception of 401k. You assume that the 401k is pre-tax. But in some companies, they offer you the Roth option for your 401k. So this is another great thing. Pen and paper, write down, check with your employer and your retirement plan if you have the Roth option at work. That's great. Some do, and if you want, you can contribute there. And even if you've already always contributed into your traditional 401k, because that's what existed in the past. The Roth option is fairly new to the world, right? To the retirement system. So it was banks implemented it faster, whereas employers only had that one option. If you were contributing to your 401k, it was before taxes, right? So that was the advantage. But what we've come to see is sometimes as we get to retirement age, guess what happens? We keep working. We're still working and our income is still high. And if your income is still high, so is your tax bracket. So that means if your tax bracket is still high, where was kind of the advantage? Traditionally, what was thought that if you put money in pre-tax, that it's growing, which is wonderful. And at the end, when it's time to take it out, you're taking it out and paying a lower tax bracket because you're making less money. Makes 100% sense. The issue is now we just keep going, or we own our own business, or we're doing consulting when we're retired, right? So if our income level is still the same or higher, then that's not so much of an advantage anymore. But like I said, it's really dependent. It's hard this is what happens with finance, right? This is why some of us tend to take a step back from this, because there is a lot of information. But don't feel overwhelmed. You don't have to learn everything. That's what wealth advisors are for. This is what we do day in and day out. I'm not smarter than absolutely anyone. It's just I'm in this field, right? If you talk to a doctor, they know everything about that. If you talk to an attorney, they know everything about their field. That's just what it is. I do it every single day. That's why it's good to kind of get advice from someone who does. Okay. Question, can you add children as beneficiaries? You can. This is what you have to think of. If the children are minors, someone will be assigned their guardian. So you just have to make sure that whoever that guardian is will kind of follow the rules of what your wishes were of whatever you assign them beneficiary to, either to your IRAs, 401ks, insurance policy. That's the only issue. If your children are minors, there will be a guardian assigned. If they're not, then you're perfect. It goes directly to them. Okay. Someone else said their employer has both options, the traditional 401k and the Roth 401k, which is great. This is great to know. This is the piece. You can contribute to both, but remember, so let's say if I'm giving 4% of my salary to, if you're thinking it, 2 can go to traditional and 2 can go to Roth. But don't confuse, 401k is still one vehicle. Regardless of the either option you pick, it's still one vehicle, 401k. If you want to contribute to an IRA, you can. So you can keep contributing here to your employer 401k plan, and then over here to a traditional or Roth IRA. So you can contribute to both, but they can't be the same vehicle. 401k, IRA, they're different. Okay. So more information. So besides me chatting away all day, there is a book that I co-authored called Family Value at Risk. In this book, I talk about how wealth is more than just money. And I know today I kind of focused a lot on tools to help with money, but it's very important for all of us to remember that there's so many other things that we want to pass on to our family members, right? Part of our legacy isn't just dollars. So let's make sure we focus on those pieces as well. In the book, though, I do have, like, maybe I'm just a worker bee in the sense that I like writing stuff down. So in the book, every other chapter has a tear off sheet. So the net worth is in there. Different aspects on wills or your legacy statement are in there. So you could tear off the sheet and kind of work alongside the book. I have a podcast where I talk about different topics, not just decision paralysis, and blogs, but this is all there. I'm sure we'll share it in the link for everyone to have, because that's all we can do, right? Is try our hardest and just educate ourselves as much as we can. If there's one, I'm hoping this was beneficial. I'm hoping you wrote down and took notes and built out your net worth statement. That'd be great. And a reminder is, if you're not making a decision, it's still a decision. Well, that's it for me.
Thank you so much. I have learned a lot. I'm sure everybody else has learned a lot. Where can we get your book if we're interested?
Amazon.
Amazon. Awesome. And just to remind everyone that we do have our helpline. So if anything that Vanessa talked about today, you need to get some personal advice, please come to our helpline. That's what we are there for. And I just want to thank you so much, Vanessa, for being with us. And we are almost at the top of the hour, so I wanted to check, is there any other questions? Looks like we've
I think I went through all of them.
got them all.
Yes. Thank you all
Great.
for taking part. And this is a step, right? It's a step in the right direction to want to become more knowledgeable in this. And I'm hoping you got something out of this.
I agree. Mary just wrote that it was terrific and very inspiring, and well said, because I definitely agree with that. So again, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to have had you today. Right. Thank you. And I guess we will end it there. And don't forget, the recording will be posted if you wanted to go back and look at it.
Perfect.
Great. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.